Hey, afternoon.
Hello, how's it going?
Yeah, I'm feeling a bit better. Still a bit sick though. So if I start not being able to speak properly, then you know why.
Yeah, there is a bit of a flu going on, right?
Yeah, apparently there are 4 virus strains currently circulating. So I guess I caught one of them eventually. But yeah, I had no energy for the first 4 or 5 days. I was sleeping at 8, waking up at 10. So it was like
Well,
very long nights.
yeah,
Even when I woke up, I just had no energy either. So
then it, yeah, you got the bad one, unfortunately.
yeah, unfortunately so.
Yeah. All right, so I think we can start, right? Wait, let me share my screen. You see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Are we having any topics? People, I quickly updated.
Yeah, I had a topic actually that came up today about specific use cases of ordered config apply. Maybe we can talk about that at some point.
Okay. Ordered config apply. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, okay. So let's maybe get to the board. Yeah. So I took the board as this, right? Do we have any other views that someone did in the meantime or not yet?
Not from my side.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so the disadvantage of milestones is that you have to assign a date to them, right? So that's a disadvantage. So maybe we can find a hook where it's just content or something like that. I haven't looked into it yet. Yeah, so the big item I think right now is getting some of these things through the review process, right? Because the problem is that every other things that we tackle, we need to get, they will have merge compile. So you will be dependent on these PRs basically. So the question is how we can make progress somehow on these.
I'm starting to do reviews currently. So the one from Telstra, for example, I just finished reviewing.
Okay.
And going through now that handle deviations in data server number 379 on data server is what I'm currently looking through.
Perfect. Yeah.
I think this is it's there on the in review, second from the top of
this one here, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I'm reviewing this one.
Yeah. The challenge that we have is they all somehow need to get together, basically, right? Because if you do the data server without a config server, then it is also not working, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the chicken and egg problem we have at the moment.
Yeah, on the big one, it seemed like Severin wanted to have a broader discussion. So, yeah, question is.
Yeah.
Again?
Yeah, so maybe we can do it tomorrow. I just have the feeling that I don't know the code base and the PR is very huge. So maybe we can look at it together.
Sure.
That would be nice. And also to get kind of a feeling how you continue and how the code base is structured and stuff like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I will write you a direct message. So maybe we can schedule something for tomorrow afternoon or evening, and then we can take a look at it together, and then we can go a step forward in merging those.
Yeah, that would be good.
I had another topic. Do you plan to have like a code quality tool like Sonar or so running? Because when I was, when I was looking at the code, I found some things like we have like sometimes really large functions which have like maybe 100 lines of code or even more. And I think for now this is okay, but just if we push that upstream at some point, maybe we'll have some problems with the maintainability of this code.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever thought about that.
Happy to discuss these things. So yeah, let's have a discussion there.
Yeah, we can improve, right? If we believe that there is things. Because do the linters not do some of that stuff?
I mean, no, not really. The linters, they more do like linting guidelines about how long is a line and stuff, but not really checking the code guidelines like the length of a function or the complexity of a function. And just if you look at some functions which have like maybe 5 cases of it, it would be easier to just like for each case have an own function also for unit testing stuff, right?
Yeah.
And for me right now it's a bit difficult because I don't want to slow down the progress. But for example, if I do that with my students, I would say, okay, please write the proper function there, which has maybe 30 lines and call different functions instead of having 150 lines.
I'm actually starting to hate and love you at the same time.
Yeah, I know, but
no, this is good. This is good. You're a pain in the ass then, but that's good, right? So I appreciate that.
I mean, maybe it should pay off afterwards. I mean, in the beginning, it's just as I said, so it slows down the progress, and in a few months, probably we'll be happy about that because we have better code.
Yeah. No, I mean there is certain things. I mean, I'm right now looking even at the higher layer structure of it, because basically like all the stuff that revolves around the tree is basically stuffed into a single package, right? Into a single folder there, and a single interface, basically, the entry interface. And yeah, I'm besides the deviation handling PR, I'm also trying to work a bit on that and untangle all of that stuff a little. But yeah, it would be nice to have an additional pair of eyes to look at it and to think about how to properly do that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's at least from a high level perspective, and then we can for sure go deeper and take a look at the functions themselves and so on.
I mean, I think the easiest would be just to kind of set up a Sonar Cube. I don't know about the licensing because at university we have one. I don't know, there is a public one. I don't know if you can use that or if it's easy to use it. But then if you see in the Sonar Club, okay, your file has maybe is very complex or has a lot of issues, then probably we should at least consider optimizing that. And so if Sonar Cube says okay, it's okay-ish, then I think we can continue and create pull requests. I mean, this is at least how I would propose it.
Sonar Cube, right? Is the tool.
Yeah, so there's Sonar Cube. I don't know if there is other tools. Probably there are.
Yeah, we have to look what CNCF is using, basically, right?
Yep.
because at the time of Nephew, I don't think we used this. Do you know, Gurley?
No, we did not. And this is like, so are you using this? So sorry, I missed the beginning of meeting. So this is like a static code analyzer, or
Yeah.
is this for license compliance? Okay, because for license compliance,
No, no.
CNCF uses FOSSA, but I don't know any static analyzer what they would use. So in this sense, we are not limited. We can use whatever we want.
Yeah, correct. But we should try to see what other people are using for the space, right? So and
Yeah,
see.
I can check Daniel. CNCF if they
I mean,
use something.
Sonar is a silver member of CNCF, so I guess at least it has something to do with the CNCF. So I can
Maybe, yeah.
share the link with you.
Yeah, okay, but let's try to find out what people are using.
I will create an issue and then assign it to me, and yeah, we can discuss it there or at the next meeting or so.
Yeah, put it on the Epic list, right? On .github probably, because it's kind of independent of any repo, right?
Yes, will do.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Yeah. So in the config server, the main work besides removing some code was the target rework, basically, that I did. So what I kind of did was, so there is a separate, let's say, instance or thread per data server, right? So one that is monitoring the connection. And then per target, you have a dedicated, so there is one manager that manages all the targets of a given data server. And then you have a dedicated instance of the target that is then spawning subscriptions and deviation watchers. So there is a state machine on a per target basis. And so it's like the observability pattern that I implemented. So if the data server, if the connection on the data server goes down, each of the targets subscribe, so you get a reflection. So you basically get an event through a channel. And that's how it's being reworked, or what I did to rework it. So I think there is still an issue, I think, Marcus, that you saw when you restarted the data server with the schema not coming up, right? So we still have to look at that, I think, right? But for me, it's an enhancement we can look at going forward. But yeah, so that's kind of the big thing on the config server. Plus, I restructured the code a little bit to make it fit better together. Yeah, so the sooner we can get this thing done, the better, I think. The thing that we still have to discuss, I believe, Marcus, is how do we clear deviations, right? Because what we have right now is for revertive, you are reacting directly. For non-revertive, we report, right? But what we still have to tackle is the clearing of the deviations, right?
Like one thing that I've noticed is, and I think that's due to the deviation calculation and sync having the same interval and being started straight after the creation of a target, is that the revertive deviations that are reverted straight away seem to show up in the API for a single deviation period, right? Because the sync is locking the tree, right? And then the sync is done. unlocking the sync tree, and the revert action has already copied that tree and does its thing on it, whilst the deviation calculation is taking that that specific tree, also does a copy of it, does its calculations, and only then it's updated by the revert action. Right. So that's but that's only something that's reported for a single deviation interval calculation interval.
Mhm.
Does it make sense what I
Yeah.
said? Okay. So I mean, one thing is to keep the lock for longer, but I also think that's not good, not nice. But yeah, I mean, in the end, it's eventual consistency, right? So we're within the boundaries of this concept, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The question is.
And if we really go and do all of that event driven, right? Then we should still report it, but it would only stay there for a second or two, or however long the whole recalculation and applying to the tree or to the device would take, right? So it would reflect the reality even closer.
Right.
Yeah, so that's just something to notice in that area.
All right. So what is the next thing that we tackle? We should discuss. So let's assume that we can get them merged, right? So then the next thing we tackle is we need to define the API to clear the deviations, right?
Yes.
Which is, I think, part of the epic here, or was part of the epic. Removal of data store. Oh, that's a different one. Sorry. This one here. Wait. No, this one here. Sorry. So here, I think we discussed this one, or do we open a new one for this, for the clear?
We should.
To remove
My
the
understanding is that the minute we have the pending PRs now reviewed and merged, we will release a new version that that allows us still to do the auto revert, that allows us to report on the deviations. And then the only bit that's missing, as we've discussed, is the reverting of non-revertive things. But therefore, yeah, I would like on the next release, we should just add a disclaimer that yeah, if you rely on the Cube API to revert non-revertives, then this release is not for you.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'll remove. But do we agree?
No, you shouldn't remove it. Why would you remove? Wait.
So there's two options. Either I remove this one and open another epic that does it, right? So then, or we keep this open. So that's the two options we have, right?
I think this will be closed. This issue will be closed the minute that we merge, because we've referenced it as the target for the PR, right? So we should add a new, probably a new epic, a new issue on data server, and then the PR that references it and will overflows it.
Yeah, that's why I'll remove this sub issue, right? This is a
I
specific.
don't know. We should refine it, right? Wait.
No, so this is
that one, the middle one. I was looking at the bottom one. I'm sorry.
no.
Yeah,
I'm
it's me.
just removing the middle one.
Yeah.
So then this will be closed as soon as this is closed, right?
Yeah.
And then I'll create another epic, right? 1 second.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'll have to leave in I don't know, 10 minutes or so, but you can.
So do we
discuss?
Yeah, add deviation clear, right? New CR. So are we agreeing? Because last time we had this discussion, what should this PR be about, right? Is it a wild card? Is it per intent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys think more about that? I was of the opinion we just keep it flexible. Because the way the CR will work, as far as I know, is from the moment, so it will be transacted once, basically. Right? Right?
Yeah.
And if it succeeds, it's kind of clear, right? I need to see how to do that in the config server.
And this is a wildcard for
The path.
for
The path. Yeah.
the target. Yeah.
So this is
the question. The question there was, or the idea was, do we want to state all the leaves and leaf lists in that CR? So you have to specifically mention the bits and pieces that you want to revert, or do you point to a branch and everything under that branch is going to be reverted if there is like overruled ones? If so, I'm of the opinion I can think of it making sense to limit it to a certain intent, right? Under that branch. But yeah, that's up for discussion. Like, do we want or need wildcards? And then yeah, also we want to limit or at least be able to limit it to intents, to a certain intent. And yeah, I from my perspective, I can see some value in it, but since I'm not a user of it, I don't know, like for instance, your use cases, Alex, and what makes the most sense from your perspective as a user.
Yeah, I also can't say that specifically. I could see a benefit of specifying a path and having everything underneath that be removed. Right, if someone's, let's say you have a network function and they're playing around trying to see, okay, how do I fix this config parameter? Let's say there's a new release and they're trying to look for a new config setup. At the end of it, maybe they've found that that doesn't work and they want to clear the entire deviation list, but without having to specify each individual intent because they've just been playing around and changed a lot of things. I could see that being a benefit.
Yeah. That's also how I look at it, why I want to keep it flexible for the time being, right? of course, you can shoot yourself in the foot, right?
But I think that the wildcards doesn't negate the path list, right? They could live together.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, that's why. Yeah, correct. So that's why I'm of the opinion. Let's make it flexible. Of course, it allows people to shoot themselves in the foot, as I call it. But on the other hand, it gives the flexibility, right?
Wait, there was also the discussion of like wildcards within the path, right? I envision, like from my perspective, wildcard was meant more in a way that that it was a star in the end of the path, right? Like selecting a branch rather than wildcarding within the path, like matching all the keys and then only the description or whatever, but rather like in this entire branch. So yeah, that should I mean, that was my view, my take on it.
Yours was the one where you have in path matching, or yours is the one where only at the end you have the wildcard?
Only at the end was my
yeah. I think that would be an easier way to go.
So yeah, like a star ending,
yeah,
kind of thing.
Yeah.
Then we have to regex it, right? Probably, right? And do we need delete and create, or?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, do we need to have the star in the path at the end, right? So if it's pointing to a container, we could be implicitly assuming that the whole branch is to be reverted. I don't see that this, like, pointing it to a container would make any other sense, right? Because on a container you would only have the ability to have a presence container, but yeah, the presence container, there's nothing to be reverted, basically. Right. So yeah, then the logic would be, if it's pointing to a container, then everything underneath it is to be reverted. If it's a leaf or leaf list, then only that thing is to be reverted. That's the implicit logic behind that. And then the question is, do we add that per intent or globally, or how do we mesh that bit?
Yeah, I think we should have per intent. I don't get me wrong, right? So that should be an option per intent. If it's not specified, what do you do? Is it then the unmanaged that we target?
No, I mean, unmanaged doesn't make sense, right? Because unmanaged, you don't have an intent, right? So from a processing perspective, I would load the tree. I would go to that container or leaf and just double check, is the highest intended value equal to, or is running equal to the highest intended value? If not, then align right now, right? Make
So
running.
would we not be able to clear, let's say, part of the config that is not managed? This would allow to do so.
What? From interesting thought. Haven't thought about that.
Yeah, that was one of the use cases that I was thinking. It's like you come up and then it allows people to clear or to update pieces of it, but I don't know. I mean, that was one of the use cases that I was thinking as well.
So that would end up in an explicit delete entry in the tree. Also possible, yeah. It can,
You get I guess complicated then if you start having dependencies between config, right?
No, but what I mean, dependencies between config.
Yeah, like references and so on.
Yeah, I mean, it can still fail, right? So it's not, because the way I'm thinking to execute this, right? So today in Kubernetes, you write to disk, right? And then the disk gives you an event, right? Whereas this is kind of a one-shot thingy. So what we can also do here is basically, once this is emitted, we kind of act upon it, and and we store a resulting, we store the resulting action somehow, right? So it's a bit of a, let's say, a one-shot action or a one-shot CR, if you see what I'm saying. That's how what we did originally in the config server, right? But then we reverted it back. The advantage of it is that you really act when it's emitted, right? So it's kind of like, I don't call it synchronous because it's executed in an asynchronous fashion, but it's kind of, you get a sync behavior. So you submit, the API server is acting upon it before it actually stores. You get a result and you store the result, right? So you store it always, but you only store the result. So you basically act upon it immediately, rather than what Kubernetes typically does. It's not like, it's acting like an admission controller. Does that make sense? Or not?
I went lost after we've talked about deleting unmanaged. Sorry.
Okay, so yeah, so
But
maybe
anyways, I need to drop now. Sorry guys.
we can take it up next week, maybe as well, right? But
Yeah. All right. Cheers. Bye.
yeah, cheers.
Bye.
So basically, I mean, what today the API server typically does is you emit a CR, right? It does all the validation rules that are emitted with admission controller. And at some point, if the config seems to be fine, right, it stores, right? And then what happens is when it stores, you get an event, and then a controller picks it up, right, and then does something with it. That's the typical flow of Kubernetes, right? Now, given that this is a one-shot entity, I was more thinking is to intercept it while emitting, execute the action, and then store the results. But that's it, right? Does it make sense what I'm trying to say, or is that clear or not?
I mean, the CR then doesn't really exist, right? That's it in the end.
Yeah, we store it to store the result, right? But it's not really event handled.
Is that, do we need to store the result?
I think
Even?
you need to tell the users what happened, not?
Yeah, unless it's an event on the target. If they're... No, I understand. I'm just trying to think. Then you start filling the cluster with these CRs that are one shot that at some point need to be cleaned up.
It's like an event thingy, right?
It's like, maybe it's more like a job. Maybe we can
Yeah,
take
correct. Yeah, correct. So that's also one thing. Yeah, it's like a job or like an event. When you admit an event on the API server, it is similar to that.
Yeah, but they get automatically cleaned up at some point, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
So I think we should also have something doing the same.
Yes, which we can do, right? So you can build a controller that basically looks at them and only don't have them longer than X amount of time or something like that, right?
Yep.
But so I'll propose something, right? And then we can review it, because it's probably best to basically first propose the API, right? And then we can look at all of these things, right?
Yes. Yeah. But I also would be careful not to make it too generic, because it's not a super generic use case that this is for, right? I mean,
Yeah, correct. Yeah. That's why I think it's good to maybe propose something and discuss it like
Yeah.
that, and then we can refine the API, right, along the line.
Yeah.
So how do we call this? Clear deviation or something like that? Or?
Yeah, clear. Maybe reset deviation, something like this.
Something like that, right?
Yeah.
Because do we have to refer to the deviation or not?
Not to the deviation, but to the path, right? Could be like restore path. What's the Git names for these things? You have Git reset, right?
Stash. It's stash or reset or something like that.
Yeah, Git reset. So maybe path reset or reset path could be a good option as well.
The challenge that I see is, if you don't refer to the deviation, that's why you can reset anything, you see?
Yeah, but it would only do something if that value is not, or the value of that path has been changed, right? It won't reapply the same value again.
Yeah, correct. So that's why I'm saying there is somewhere a connection to the deviation.
But it doesn't have to be, right? I mean, I think the Git maybe is quite a nice way of thinking about this. If you do a Git reset dot, for example, it won't recreate the files that weren't already there. Only if there was changes, it would revert those changes. Okay.
So if you do a reset let's maybe think of it. So if you would do a reset of an intent, right? It would clear all the deviations, right?
Yes.
With a slash, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Is that how you want to design this, or is it? And then you can specify specific parts. Is that the way we design it? Because then the use case that I was mentioning with unmanaged, you cannot do really, right?
With unmanaged, with the slash, then you would basically delete everything that's unmanaged. Yeah.
Yes, correct. That's horrible, right?
You could have a toggle there though, right? You could have ignore unmanaged, for example.
What do you mean with ignore unmanaged? So, but then I would say, then the intent is mandatory, right? So if the intent is mandatory and intent doesn't exist, this thing is not valid, right?
It depends. You have ignore unmanaged, then you require this sort of intent to exist but implicitly. If you say ignore unmanaged is false, right? So you care about unmanaged as well, then your slash is going to go and modify all of the unmanaged, like delete all of the unmanaged config, plus do any reset that might be pending.
Right, and ignore unmanaged. Where do you set that? Is that a configuration flag on that we set on the environment variables, or is that as part of the CR?
As part of the CR, maybe. This way you can have, you specify it, because what you're doing, it's a bit like an option flag on your git reset, right? You have git reset soft, git reset hard,
Yeah.
and so on. Maybe this is something I'm trying to figure out, which is the correct documentation of the git page, just to get some more insight there.
Because one way to think about it is the following. One way, maybe while we are on it. So and then we have paths, right? So this is a list, right, of paths, right?
Yeah.
Would we?
But it depends if we're doing it per intent like that, or if we're just giving it a list of paths and it's sort of doesn't matter what the intent is.
Yeah, so let's say that we can also allow this name to be optional, right? In which case, right? So you do this. Would that not go then straight to unmanaged? That's what I was thinking. But if
But it could mean two things, right? It could mean unmanaged, but it could also mean no, that you don't specify the specific intent. You just want to restore. Right, because if you have, let's say, two intents pointing to the same field,
yes,
right? And you don't care, you've been playing around, you've messed around with that field, you just want to reset it back to whatever the value should be. That should be value will be whatever wins from the two intents, but you don't care to specify which intent has a high priority and which one doesn't. You just want to reset that value, so that you just want a path without an intent name.
I see. And that's how you can also do unmanaged, basically.
And that's how you could do unmanaged as well, yeah. Potentially, right? Because if I put a slash and just say I want to restore all of the changes that I've done, that slash could mean leave the unmanaged config as is, right? Because it's just my changes. But then you could be, okay, I don't need any of this unmanaged config. Let's get rid of all of the unmanaged config. And then we do care this slash. Then this slash is important for.
So if you do this with a slash, you kind of reset, you go to, that's very dangerous, right?
Yeah, this is RMRF.
Yeah, correct. Indeed. We probably should not allow that, I guess, right?
But the legitimate use cases for it as well. I could
Yeah,
see,
but you if you do a slash, maybe not, right?
I don't know. This is in the user. Yeah. Yeah, that's.
Or we have somewhere an environment variable where we allow it or something like that, right? Okay, but kind of this is what we want, right? That's kind of the API, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And we would allow multiple intents in the same thing, I guess, right? Otherwise,
I think it makes sense. Otherwise, you start to clutter and make it complicated for somebody to figure out what they're actually wanting to do.
yeah. So something like this, right? Okay. All right.
So it seems like. Sorry, I was going to say git restore seems to be the name of this clearing your local one. So maybe restore path could be an option for the naming, or restore deviate. Yeah, restore path. This is from the git restore.
Yeah. Yeah, it's restore indeed. Yeah.
And maybe at some point you can add a regex for the name or so.
Yeah, we will. I mean, we will probably have to do something, like that.
That's good.
But initially, we'll keep it simple, and then we will make it more sophisticated, right?
Totally makes sense. Yes.
Yeah, restore or restore, reset deviation, restore path. Initially, it doesn't resonate with me, but I'm just thinking. I'm just trying to think about it.
Yeah, I think the naming can come later a little bit. I think that the API is more important.
Yeah, correct. But if you put a file, the name matters. So, right? If you,
I mean, the ability to clear a deviation and then the name restore path is kind of confusing to me.
yeah, that's also me. So that's where I'm my head. But that's a mental model that I have right now. I agree.
I root for reset deviation or clear deviation or something like that.
Or reset deviation, right? Or
Yeah,
reset
something like that.
or reset path.
I mean, then I like the deviation part in it.
But the deviation part, we don't necessarily have a deviation. I mean, you can, but you don't also need to specify it for the unmanaged, for example.
See, this is why you switch to path. Okay.
Yeah, correct. So it's if you do unmanaged, okay, there is deviations, by the way, also in unmanaged.
Yeah, but they don't behave the same way. I mean, they're not particularly useful in this case, specifically in this case.
Yeah, because you don't have something to compare against, basically, right? So that is the odd side of it, right? So we kind of treat it right now as a brownfield, so it's kind of done. But so if you apply this towards the unmanaged, it has a different, let's say, you implement it differently, right? Because you don't look at what was there and then reset it. You just look at
You drop the value at that
yeah.
path, basically.
Maybe
Value.
is it then not better to make that thing something else or call it someone else, something else, because you do something else, right? Although implementation wise, we could do the same things, but would it not be more obvious to the user if you call the unmanaged something else?
Maybe it should be called unmanaged config again, as it was before.
Yeah.
Deviation.
Yeah, at the moment it's deviation, right? But we could.
I mean, it does not really solve the problem about the naming of this issue, because then you have two different elements. It could be reset deviation or it could be reset unmanaged config, right?
No, but what I'm proposing or what let's say trying to discuss is to call these two things a different API, right? So you add a different CR. So one is called something with deviation, and the other one is called something like reset path or something like that, right?
Oh, you mean then you also have kind of two ways to clear a deviation and also unmanaged config.
Yes. So if you target the unmanaged config, you basically target something. So you call it differently. Is what I'm proposing or just trying to discuss.
I mean, I think it does make sense if you have a proper naming. You call a deviation, or you have a deviation, and then you can reset the deviation, and you have something unmanaged. Let's call it unmanaged config, and then you reset the unmanaged config. This would be a proper design, in my opinion, because otherwise, I mean, if it's really two things and you call it deviation and it's like unmanaged config and deviation, you just use one noun, it's confusing, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. So that's why, I think we have to call them differently. Because they are mentally a different thing.
Then probably it's the nicest solution to keep them as two elements, right? So differentiate them.
So it would be reset or reset unmanaged paths or something like that, right?
I mean, this would probably depend on how you call it, not in this API, but another one.
Yeah, I think let's maybe first agree or try to agree on the current API, on the new API that are focused on deviations, right? And then we can look at the unmanaged side afterwards, if that makes sense.
I mean,
Yeah.
I like the unmanaged config.
What do you say, unmanaged?
I think Alex proposed unmanaged config, right? I like that.
Yeah, this is what we had it called before, sort of. Or there was a
But that was kind of an, no, before we had, yeah, we called the deviation. So it basically was unmanaged config, which basically was the set of deviations that were not part of an intent. Basically, that was what it was. But then they were actually deviations. So so now we have basically two types of deviations: deviation related to a config, right, which are intent deviations, and you have deviations related to a target, which were the original unmanaged. You see, so although they are all called deviations, there is a kind in this API that differentiates them, right? So for example, if I go here online, right? Let's see whether it works. See, if you look to the deviation, one is per config and the other one is per target. You see here, right? So
And
the config is intent, and the target is the unmanaged, basically.
I see. I mean, so basically we have a config deviation, a target deviation. So it maybe would make sense to call it reset config deviation and target deviation. Then it's a proper naming, isn't it?
Yeah, or clear deviation and then have a kind. One is target and the other one is config, right?
But
That's
yeah, that probably is even nicer.
Yeah, I think because the amount of APIs, yeah. Would that make sense that we call one, so that we have a kind? I think that's how it is in them, right? So if you go like this one, which has 0. So you see there is a deviation type is kind, right?
Oh, I see.
The type here is config, and the other one is, but these are big, right?
So this could be reused also in the reset API, right? Or in the clean whatsoever API, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That would be quite nice because then you have you're following the same design.
Yeah, which is always nice. Yeah.
Mhm.
But
I
it
like
means the downside is, what you sometimes want, right, is that I think you might want to specify multiple configs in the same API, right? Because it's kind of a single shot thing, you see?
Yes. But isn't it possible to have just a list of different reset kind of commands or actions? Like you do like reset this config deviation, reset this config deviation, reset this target deviation.
Yeah, you could, right? Because you can execute them one after the other, right? So that is
Yeah,
no problem.
yes.
Yeah.
And it's just a list.
But should we then not design it in a way that you have a name and a type, right?
I mean, it's called deviation type, right?
Yeah, a deviation type here. So I will call it the same. Right? Like that. So
Yes.
and then paths. Would that make sense, Alex?
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, the question is if we decide that we want to call unmanaged config deviation still or not.
Say again, sorry.
If we want to keep calling unmanaged config some kind of deviation, or if we do want to clarify that.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment that's how they are called, right? So at the moment they are a deviation somehow because you're not really managing. The question is, how do you look at it? If you look from data server point of view, they also report it like it, right? So they're all deviations.
But you can differentiate it with the deviation type, right? So unmanaged, it is target. It's a deviation type target, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, the unmanaged, but the naming's a bit strange.
It's called a deviation because you don't have an intent, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but then it's also not a deviation necessarily, right? Because you're not deviating from an intent. Right? A deviation is sort of indicating that you've moved away from the wanted state to something else, but technically you never had a wanted state. So
yeah, but that's how we looked. So the reason why it ended up like this was because you don't have anything and there is something, we report it as a deviation, although there is nothing, right? So that's why the type is differentiating them, basically. So that's the way that we distinguish them.
So basically you can compare it to empty or nothing, and this is why you have the deviation, right?
Yeah, before we just had a separate CR just to call them unmanaged, but they were kind of underneath it was the same CR.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
but the question is more, can we, like say, if we do this, the only thing that if you don't have a deviation type, right? Because one of the use cases that we had was we want to reset all the parts of all the intents of the highest priority, irrespective of the intent. That was this case, right? Do we want to support that? And then, so let's say you don't specify a deviation type, right?
and this means everything.
Yes. And then you can say, do we ignore unmanaged, or do we ignore the running in this case, which is your ignore flag, right? Correct?
Yeah, but is this not just the? I mean, if you're specifying deviation type, and you don't have a deviation type there, this to me is implicitly saying just delete everything.
yeah.
Yes, but for example, what you can also do is you can say name blah, right? You can say deviation type target, and here you only focus on the unmanaged or the.
Yeah, no, I agree exactly. But then not specifying deviation type to me would be
Everything,
including target and config.
Okay, I see. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So the ignore flag is basically useless because you can say both target or config, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it would be like this then, right?
Yes.
Okay. So this, yeah, your ignore is kind of this, basically.
Yeah, this is now the inverted case of this.
Okay. So let's see. I'll propose something along this line, and then we can always refine it, right? But yeah. But you don't, yeah. You can. I wanted to have a bit of a base rather than otherwise we got to continuously discuss it, right?
I mean, this heavily depends on if you want to change the deviation of this unmanaged stuff. I mean, if you change it there, then, or is this fixed? I mean,
what do you mean? So, I was not.
I mean, if you now propose this API and then at some point we decide to say, okay, actually it's not deviation if it's unmanaged, right? Target deviation doesn't make sense, then.
And we can remove it from the API, right? So we can always change, right? Nothing
Yeah,
is
obviously we can change, but it would be nice to have something and agree on it and then keep it.
yeah, correct. So that's why I wanted to have this discussion. Yeah, I agree.
I mean, for me, to be honest, if it's target deviation and config deviation, then it's clear. And also, yeah, the reset API does make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's probably not a bad start, right, for this, and then we can see if it works or not.
I mean, yeah, the design is pretty nice. For me, it was also new that you differentiate between the deviation, target, and config, or at least I forgot about that. If you know that, then it does make sense.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. I will propose this. Okay, so we are running out of time. Maybe I'm still having some time. Alex, you wanted to discuss this ordering thing, or you want to wait it for next week?
I will be off for a couple of weeks, so I won't be around the next ones. Maybe I could just quickly cover what this is about.
Yes.
Speaking to the integrators of our CNFs, and they said that they have a case where, first of all, actions are coming up again,
Yes.
which we did speak about a bit. But they also had cases where, for example, if there's a redeployment of a CNF, so a full redeployment of a CNF, you get a CNF that's empty coming up, and they need to restore data to it. So there are steps there where they'd have to set a decryption key for the backup, followed by actually an action to restore the backup, and then change this decryption key into an encryption key so that future backups are encrypted down then.
So they need a sequence of actions, basically.
A sequence of config apply.
Yes.
Yeah, because it's first of all applying a config, then doing an action, and then doing another config apply once the action is completed. And there are other CNFs that we have where this is also needed, where we have sort of dependencies between config apply, where you would have step 1, apply some config, step 2, once that config is applied, then other config is unlocked to then configure.
And is this something that always has to happen if you apply, or only in the first step?
That's a question I could not answer. You mean when it doesn't have a config associated with it only, or if?
No. So here's one way of implementing this. I was thinking, right, is so one of the good things these days is that right now what we do, unlike the beginning, right, what we do today is we take all the config that we have on a per target, right, and we always transact the full Monty, right?
Yeah.
Which means that somehow if we indicate a sequence, right, let's say sequence, a CR with a sequence 1 or something, we could group them, or we could execute first sequence 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, or something like that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so if we somehow express the sequence in the CR, right, somewhere, right, then we could execute in that sequence a certain transaction, right? So we could either delegate all of it to the data server and then he does it, or the config server does first 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. So that's a detail at this stage. But what I'm trying to say is that because we now transact on a per target, we have more control over these things.
Yeah. The other question is whether it's something we want to do at all, because it doesn't follow particularly well the declarative approach. But at the same time, it's something that I know that our teams need. So we have some workaround in the meantime.
Yeah, so it is declarative if you always do it. You see what I'm saying? So you can still manage it as a declarative, but of course under the hood you execute it in an imperative way somehow, but through the sequence, but it's declared through the API. Now, if you always do this, then it's very easy, right? If you only do it at the first step, it's a bit more complicated, because then you have to know, although we also have that capability these days, right? Because that is, at the moment, there is two phases in config server. That is, one is if the data server disappears, right? Or if the target disappeared and comes back up, we have this concept of a recovery configs, as it's called, right? And so that has to succeed before you go to the next stage, right? So which means that we could do something special in that phase versus anything else as well. So that's another. And so we have those two hooks basically these days that we didn't have in the beginning, which makes this easier.
Okay. Yeah, it's something that I wanted to sort of bring up and discuss, just to see if it's something that we could solve.
Yeah.
Because it's becoming more and more important for our CNF maintainers. It's unlikely that we're going to get fully away from having to do this from our vendor, right? So in the meantime, we have to have some kind of workaround, and that workaround is basically playbooks, right? That do these specific ordering configurations in a specific order. But this approach is sort of okay, but now we're back at playbooks again. How we want to move away from these.
Yeah.
So,
but so if you, what would be interesting to know, Alex, is that either do it initially, right, only during recovery, or do it all the time.
And okay, could you clarify quickly what only during recovery? But this is only when the device connects, right? So this is like,
yes.
But this happens whenever the device connection is restored. So it's multiple times potentially that it happens.
No, only once. It will only happen once.
Except if there's a connection interruption and
yeah. So if you disconnect and reconnect, right, the device, and if the data server signals that back, which I think he does, you will do a recovery again. Yes. Yeah. Every time you disconnect.
So basically the question is, when applying these ordered configs, can these configs be reapplied multiple times?
Yeah, so there is two ways, two ways to think about it, Alex. Right? One is it is declared, right, and because you store the information, we either do it during recovery once, right, or every time we recover the target, and then no longer, or we do it all the time. That is the two easy ways. The third option is if we design this reset of deviation, let's call it execute sequence or something, or do your action thing, right, or config action. If you then specify a sequence, right, in that action CR somehow, we would, so that's then an on-demand thing, right? But for that we have to create a new, let's say, API, I guess. And then you basically specify the sequence that you want, and then we will execute it, similar to what I was describing, how we do this deviation cleary thingy, right? So that's another alternative.
Sequence on demand, or
we can call it whatever we want. So something like a trigger config or something, or sequential config. I don't. I'm not so good. Like a triggered action or something. Something.
I'm just making notes. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah. But what I'm trying to say is that because of the fact that we reworked all this config per target, it becomes way easier to do than it used to be.
Okay, that's also interesting.
Because in the past, each of these configs were independent controller reconciled, right? So we had no clue of what was happening.
Yeah, yeah. Now there's a bit more structure because it's done by data server in the tree.
Now we do everything on a per target basis, right? So we kind of read. So now that is not per CR, per config CR controllers anymore. They are gone.
Yeah.
There is only per target controllers, which means that it becomes. So you basically. What we do today is that if a CR on a target changes, we basically look at all of them and group them all together, and then we transact.
Yeah.
And that change make this type of requirement way more easy to do.
But this is now going to mean multiple transaction steps, right? Because you're going to have to submit to the device and wait for it to be configured before the next config goes through, right? In this sequence.
Yes, and that we already have as well, because we have now so during a transaction of a target, right? The data server locks, right? So, and we could have two implementation, either config server sends it all to the data server and the data server executes the sequence, or the config server does the coordination. These are also, that's also an option, right? But
yeah. No, I think data server makes sense because then you have this ability to have outside of Kubernetes it done too.
Yeah, correct. So agree. Yeah. So I think it's better to do it on the data server. But okay, let's see what Marcus says, right? But I have the feeling, yeah, it's kind of better to do it there. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is that our rework that we have done is allowing for these type of requirements or us to implement them in a more easy way.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. That's interesting. Thanks. Yeah, I'll have a think, and then I'll try and get Fabian then to join next week and give some feedback.
Yeah. Okay. And then we can, because see, what I was thinking is to do this deviation clear, because then we are back on par, right? And then we have to decide what do we tackle next, right? And it's either I was thinking for the time being to handle this sensitive data, but maybe this is more priority. So I think.
Sorry, for us, the sensitive data is also very important. There's a workaround now with Flux, but this is very important because it will be a big stop. There's a lot of sensitive config that and then really the last pushback that we're currently seeing is about these actions. And maybe it's worth revisiting the design for these actions to also implement this sort of what's it called? This
one shot
or something like this one, because actions are maybe we can somehow find a nice way to bring these together in a one package thing, because they're usually used in the same way. You do something, then do an action, right? So do some config, then an action, or you do some config, then some more config, or some config, then an action, then some more config. Those are sort of the three cases mainly that we're facing. So maybe it's worth looking at the design that we put together and seeing if we can make it a bit more generic for this whole use case rather than just for action specifically.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, it's more easy to do these days than it used to be.
That's good. That's good to hear. I can also share that back.
Yeah.
Cool. Good.
All right.
Then thanks, Vim. Appreciate it. Thanks. Yeah. I'll be back in a few weeks' time, so I won't be at the next meetings, but
no worries.
See you when I'm back, and have a good.
Yeah. By the way, Alexander, I forgot to ask, but I saw Fabian. Would he also not be okay as a maintainer?
I think that he would be probably interested in it. It could be good. Then we have a few more people looking at code reviews. The only thing is quite busy with various other topics as well. So
correct. But so I mean, the more people you have, the more we can spread, right? So that's why I'm asking.
I can ask him what he thinks.
Yeah, if you don't mind, that would be great, because then we'll trigger him to be part of the chain, because I think he has the right skills, right? So it's
yeah, definitely. Yeah, good. I'll go and talk to him. He's in the office with me today, so I can talk
Alright.
to him.
Appreciate. Thank
Cool.
you.
Thanks, Tim. Have a good rest of the afternoon.
Yeah. All right. Cheers. Bye.
Ciao, ciao.